Hello everyone, this is StrawberryShorty here with my recap and commentary of Interview with the Vampire, episode 12, Don't Be Afraid, Just Start the Tape. So last episode everyone made nothing but good choices, and I'm sure they'll keep making more. So let's get started. The interview resumes, and Louis and Armand are all lovey-dovey as they recall their time as an official couple. Daniel picks up on something in Louis' wording, but Armand tries to make excuses for it. And some guy named Malik is let in, and he doesn't seem very nice. Armand takes him to another room, and Louis fills us in at Daniel's request. Armand rarely eats, and when he does, he prefers to hunt for it. Hunt, in this case, apparently means try and find a bad guy willing to meet up with him and then kill him. If that doesn't work, he finds someone who, wants to die. Louis is really in love with the flowery wording. He insists Armand's methods are rarely violent, but it seems like he's saying Malik will be alone, or that Malik will be begging for death, which seems contradictory. Anyway, Daniel and Louis continue the interview alone, but not before Daniel has more of those weird Armand flashes, during which we can hear Daniel sobbing and apologizing. This prompts Daniel to redirect the topic to their interview all those years ago, finding it a bit odd that Armand saved his life after having killed so many. Louis says this was because he'd noticed Louis was partial to Daniel, which is making me feel like a thought I had earlier, that Armand was jealous of Daniel and dug into his painful past in retaliation, seemed much more likely. Louis insists Armand protects Louis' happiness, though Daniel doesn't seem to believe it. Continuing on this subject, Daniel asks Louis if he doesn't finish, but the implication is clear. Again, that would support my Armand was jealous theory. We flash back to when Daniel was brought back to Louis' place. Louis has a backgammon board full of drugs, despite refusing to partake himself and implying he never has. Why does he even have them then? Can vampires even get high? Apparently, the two didn't hook up, which present-day Daniel and Louis share a laugh over. We see the start of the interview, and Daniel thinks that Louis did the interview because he was lonely. Louis makes excuses, but Daniel pushes. For his own sake, he wants to know what happened between them. Louis asks Daniel what the last thing he remembers is, and there's another Armand flash. Despite this, Daniel claims it was Louis eviscerating Lestat. Back to the old interview, Louis is going on and on about how awful Lestat was. And all I can think is that even then, Louis was still in love with Lestat, that he loved him in spite of everything he was and had done. Daniel thinks he was foolish back then and should have realized what an unstable person he was with. Louis talks about the time he watched Claudia leave and how he chose not to go with her. He was in so much pain, he reveals he was considering ending his own life. Young Daniel challenges this, feeling like Louis was going to throw away what Daniel considers a gift. He's picked up on the fact that Claudia is most likely gone and wants Louis to make him a vampire, says he could be Louis' new Lestat or Claudia, but better. Louis is enraged he'd asked this after everything he's been told. And I'll say that Louis' anger in this version feels like it makes a lot more sense. Daniel here is young and stupid and high as a kite, and he's being beyond insensitive. He's making light of the dark place Louis was in at the time and talking about replacing people he shouldn't be. It's easy to see why Louis would snap, and we see him do just that. Back in the present, Daniel thinks he deserved to have his butt kicked, but not to be killed. Louis admits he overreacted, but Daniel doesn't seem content to just leave it at that. He shows Louis that he has a copy of the original interview, which he claims to have saved in the cloud. Louis calls him a liar, and Daniel says that he's one too, whether he knows it or not. Daniel plays the part after the attack. Past Armand saves Daniel and is angry, but not only because it's morning. He fights with Louis over the mess in the apartment, and the fact that he's going to be the one cleaning it up, just like always. Clearly the two weren't always a perfect, happy couple, and Louis has gotten himself into some trouble before. Louis clearly has been affected by the drugs that were in Daniel because he's acting really giggly and saying things he probably wouldn't normally. When Armand calls him out for putting them at risk by revealing the truth to Daniel, Louis starts fighting back, calling him boring. He tells Armand that the minutes he spent with Daniel were more exciting than the decades spent with him, and Armand shoots back that their decades together were probably more interesting than the stuff on the tapes. We get his impression of Louis whining about his life, which becomes Louis doing his own impression of Armand. The two keep ripping into each other about their painful pasts, and Armand is especially bothered that Lestat was brought up for the first time in decades and talked about so much. Louis insists the problems between him and Armand aren't because of Lestat, but Armand just points out how he kept throwing around her name, most likely referring to Claudia, for cover, but things always circled back to Lestat. Louis insists he loved Claudia, and Armand insists she didn't love him, unlike Armand always did. This is where it becomes clear Louis' memories aren't entirely legit. He knows Claudia didn't love him, though I'm personally not entirely sure that's true, but it seems like he's having trouble remembering something. He claims to hear Claudia calling him in Paris, then leaves. I got some weird buffering there. In the present, Louis makes it clear he doesn't remember any of that. Daniel wants to know where Armand followed Louis to in that moment. He went through another metal door after leaving the room, and then there were screams. Louis couldn't have gone outside due to the sun, so where did he go? Daniel keeps playing the sound and repeating what is heard. And Louis remembers. He did go outside and attempted to die in the sunlight. A frantic Armand managed to get him back inside, but he was in really bad shape. Why does this keep buffering? I'm mostly looking at my script as I'm saying these things, so I don't tend to notice if the episode starts buffering. But yeah, anyway. Lying in bed, charred and in agony, Louis asks what happened. Armand tells him, but calls his subsequent apology meaningless. Young Daniel is still alive and in the next room, somewhat out of it. Armand is less than thrilled when Louis mentions him being alive and asks that he not be hurt, using his powers to repeatedly slam Daniel into the floor. Daniel wants to know how long he was there, recalling again that body with a bag over its head. Armand actually killed that guy. He was a neighbor who saw Louis burning in the sun while taking out the trash. I'm not sure why he was taking out the trash on the roof, but whatever. Poor guy. Couldn't have just knocked him out and put him back in bed, make him believe it was all some weird dream. Anyway, present, Daniel and Louis worked together to figure out what happened. Armand headed to where Daniel was, with Louis trying to stop him from likely finishing the young man off. He plays the interview, which of course is part where Louis is talking about Lestat. Taking control of Daniel's body, Armand introduces himself. Ignoring Louis' pleas, Armand reveals Daniel is one of over 100 guys Louis has brought to that apartment, and the only one Louis didn't sleep with and then kill. Naturally, this displeases Armand even more, because that makes Daniel special. And I can already see we're gearing up for where those flashes come in, because Armand keeps focusing on Louis' claim that Daniel was fascinating. Armand ruins all of Daniel's non-interview tapes, which is totally not cool. Shutting the door to stop Louis' pleas, Armand brings up all of Daniel's past memories. Because, as I said, he's petty and jealous. Seriously, he's about as toxic as Lestat is. In an effort to prove he's the more fascinating one, Armand briefly touches upon his own story, but as he starts to talk about his second memory, the first being the slavers chasing him, he gets weird and talks about black holes. He intends to keep digging into Daniel's past, but leaves with the neighbor's body for the time being. Returning to the present, I'm honestly just expecting this episode to end with Armand coming in and just being like, what'd I miss? Daniel is clearly emotional, remembering his experience with Armand, and Louis actually tries to defend him because he was angry. Lestat was angry a lot too, Louis. Suddenly, Daniel and Louis are in that weird zen area of the apartment, and Daniel is figuring out he was there in the past apartment for at least 4 days. Armand was in some kind of trance, clearly communicating with someone. Louis urges Daniel to try and remember more, as Armand will be returning soon. They're able to figure out that Armand left the room back then to attend to Louis, who was in pain. Armand listened to the tapes over and over, and though Louis points out how he only ever talked trash about Lestat, Armand can't help but notice how different it was from the way Louis talked to him about Lestat. Oh my gosh, the buffering again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. He wonders if Louis was hoping Daniel's book would be published, Lestat would see it, and then come after him. Armand seems willing to leave Louis, and reveals he actually knows where Lestat is. Apparently that's who Armand was talking to earlier. Louis makes it clear he doesn't want to go back to Lestat, and boy, Armand is really manipulative. It's pretty messed up bringing the abusive ex into things. And I hope all this buffering just, keeps us from getting copyright claimed, but it won't. Anyway, Armand calls out to Lestat again, acting as a telephone between him and Louis. Lestat wants to know what Louis wanted to say to him and is concerned and says that he loves him. Armand can't bring himself to relay that last one and slowly drowns Lestat out as he cries for Louis. Armand goes for the pity, talking about how Louis was going to leave him for death, and asks if he has atoned enough yet for what happened in Paris. See, I totally knew he was lying when he said in the present day that he'd never hurt Louis. Daniel and Louis both recall Armand telling them to rest. After shutting Louis in his coffin, Armand was being all nice to Daniel and cleaning him up. He preys on Daniel's insecurities about the future, and I can't wait for someone to turn his own tricks against him. Someone who's always worried about what my future holds is pretty messed up to listen to. Seriously, I can't wait for this punk to get what he deserves. First person to slap or punch Armand gets bonus points, but only if it is present Armand. Armand attempts to drain Daniel, but Louis interferes. He technically just asks for Daniel to live out the night because he needs him to as a testament to his and Armand's companionship, but Armand agrees to let him go reluctantly. Louis goes to comfort Daniel. And in the present, Daniel gets up and storms off, clearly emotional. Please let him be going to sock Armand. Louis is clearly upset as well. Daniel returns with a book which he reads to Louis. I think it's a nice message that Louis left in his book because it's like kind of contradicting a lot of the mean, future-y, prediction-y stuff that Armand was saying earlier. And Daniel thinks that it was something that someone else said to him or wrote for him and realizes that it was actually Louis who said those things back then and that his memory had just been confused. And Louis basically left him with those words to counter what Armand said, which was kind of awesome, to be honest. Anyway, Daniel recalls all the mistakes he's made with his marriage and daughters, yet how he stayed a journalist despite all that. Louis thinks that he and Armand gave Daniel a bunch of drugs before releasing him and feeding him an altered version of events during this, which is his explanation. Daniel says this accounts for why he didn't remember, but asks what accounts for why Louis didn't, like it's not going to be Armand shenanigans. Speaking of Armand, he returns, and he's wearing the most ridiculous sunglasses. Louis reveals they started talking about San Francisco, and you can tell Armand is worried. They bring up why Armand saved Daniel, and Armand's explanation is word for word the one Louis gave when Daniel brought up that very same topic to him earlier. Daniel and Louis both just look at Armand, and then the episode ends. I hate that it ended there, and nobody hit Armand. So that was the 12th episode. We're getting some blanks filled in. I guess it feels like all that's left is to see how things end with Claudia. And season 3 has got to be about Lestat's story because they're really running out of ways to force the actor into all the episodes. But yeah, so what did you think of this episode? Who do you think will be the first one to hit Armand? I think it's going to be Lestat. I don't know why. Put your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!